It's a new year, it's a new semester, and it's a whole new edition of Bobcat Blitz. We got rid of the game show, we're bringing in more of a roundtable discussion. So let's get started with the introductions. To my immediate right, the co-director of the Quinnipiac Bobcat Sports Network, Mark Schwartz.
Thanks, Zach. It's a pleasure to be here, help out with the new edition of Bobcat Blitz.
To my far left, the other co-director of the Quinnipiac Bobcat Sports Network, Matthias Gauss.
Thanks, Zach, for having me. Always a pleasure.
And to my far right, my tall, what our advisor calls my twin, Nick Dench.
Always nice to be here, and I'm really looking forward to the new game show, the new type of show.
And last but not least, Marty Joseph.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to get this going.
All right, so like we said, we're moving away from the game show mentality. This is not going to be a winner. It's just an open forum, more like a sports reporter show, but we talk all QU sports, no more professionals. So let's get started with the hottest team on campus. If you haven't heard, the men's hockey team's doing something special. I don't know. They're number 2 in the nation according to the USCHO poll. They received, I think, 22 first place votes in the poll yesterday. Minnesota still in first place, only by a couple of points though. So guys, do you think this team got slighted? Should they be in the second place right now? Or do they deserve that number 1 ranking? Who wants it?
I'll take it, Zach. It's tough to say if they really deserve the number 1 spot right now. They're on an impressive 17-game unbeaten streak. So as a Quinnipiac student, you'd like to see them in the first place. But it seems that there's a little bit of a anti-ECAC bias, and Quinnipiac's a school that hasn't had this big-time program history. So it's hard to appoint the school to the number 1, that looted number 1 spot when they haven't been there before, and it's tough to give them that kind of recognition.
Yep. I think that's the one key we talked about. If you were a Minnesota or a North Dakota diehard blue blood fan, would you want a small EZAC, as they call it, team to be the number 1 team in the country? I mean, that's where I think it came down to. I don't think being number 2 is actually not a problem. Sort of take the heat off you. Yes, they still have a huge target on their back from teams within the ECAC, especially this tough weekend upcoming hitting the road. But I don't think it is a big issue. I feel like maybe some people have felt they got slighted, but I don't find it to be an issue.
Yeah, I really didn't find that they were slighted. I mean, they haven't beaten Boston College or Notre Dame by a combined 10 goals, which Minnesota has. So that's something that Minnesota has over Quinnipiac right now. But Quinnipiac does have a stronger RPI and strength of schedule. So whoever's saying they do deserve number 1, they do have an argument. It's not like they're going and saying, oh, we just have a higher winning streak or something like that. They actually do have arguments. Quinnipiac has been playing very well, but they're losing or almost losing to teams they shouldn't be doing that to.
Yeah, I have to agree with everyone. I mean, I still think this team has yet to hit its full potential. I mean, obviously their goaltending and their defense have been phenomenal all year long, but you look at the 3 guys that carried them through the year last year, the Joneses and Pekka, and they're nowhere near the numbers they put up last year. So for saying that and still being the number 2 in the country is a pretty shocking thing coming into after the way last year ended at least. So, I mean, you maybe like to see like Mark said, you like to see it as a fan, you like to see them being number 1, but you can't complain with the number 2 ranking either.
Yeah.
Just to piggyback, real quick off his point, the fact of how the Jones brothers and Pekka not up to where they've been, but it's sort of been the depth that this team has. I'm sure we'll talk about it at length, but you look at a guy like Russell Goodman, who leads the team in game-winning goals. Who would have thought at this point in the season he would have been there? Clay Harvey has had a stellar senior year after sort of not really showing too much in the past, but I think the depth that this team has is phenomenal. And, if you have to look at it, would you rather have so much depth or would you have one consistent top scorer? So I think that's where we can sort of, look at a team like Nebraska Omaha, who has a guy like Ryan Walters, who is tops in the country in points per game, but they've stumbled a little bit, and Quinnipiac was able to sweep them when they came here in December. So it's just however the side of the coin you want to look at.
And that's something we see with hockey at all levels. It's not the teams that are going to have that one player, that other backup player who can score 30, 40 goals. It's the teams that have depth throughout, like this Quinnipiac team. I'm a Devils fan, so like the Devils, who made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. Those are the teams that we see successful in the NHL, in the NCAA, and that's what Quinnipiac's been doing. Like you said, Matthias, they've been playing off their depth all year.
Well, it's nice to have the depth. There's no doubt about that. To get through a regular season, you need that depth, and you need to have people contribute from all different lines to help move you through that regular season. But when it comes time for the tournament, the ECAC tournament, and into the NCAA tournament, hopefully, if you're a Bobcats fan, you're going to need those players that Marty alluded to earlier, the Jones twins and Pekka, and even Jeremy Langlois, to step up and get those big-time goals when you need it. Because there have been times throughout this unbeaten streak that we've seen this team struggle a little bit offensively. And you said it again, Marty, that the defense has been stellar, the goaltending has been stellar, but sometimes the offense is lacking a little bit. It's nice to have the depth, but eventually you're going to need some of your top players to step up.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw in that UConn game, which they should have destroyed UConn in, regardless of who's stepping up and who's not. The two goal scorers were Connor Jones and Matthew Pekka, so they did step up to keep that unbeaten streak going, but we need to see them doing it more and more if this team's going to continue the way they are, because they have really started to fall off with that powerhouse, and coming up against Yale this weekend, that's not going to be an easy task, and if players like the Joneses and Pekka and Langlois can't step up, this team's really going to struggle to keep that going.
And just going back off Mark's point, when they do make it to the national tournament and play some of these national powerhouses, there's going to be times where the goaltending and the defense might not be able to back them up, and you're going to need some of those players to step up. Nick just said Pekka and Jones are the goals in the UConn game. Hopefully that will spark something. I think it had to be at least 10 games since Connor scored his last goal. So hopefully that sparks him. Pekka scored as well. So hopefully that line starts to get some more confidence. We haven't seen them playing together a lot, but you're going to need your top guys to be there if they want to gun for an ECAC championship and make noise in the tournament as well.
All right, looking forward to this weekend. They got a big weekend. Obviously, you got the game at Yale on Saturday, but you got that game at Brown on Friday. Now, this is a Quinnipiac team that falls into that trap game a lot, and that's what this Brown game has. It looks like it could be. Brown, one of the teams that's struggling in the ECAC. Do you think Quinnipiac's going to fall for that again? Because this is a team that we saw lose to AIC, saw struggle against UConn, two teams they should have beat handily. But again, this is a team, we've seen the potential. They went out and they beat, at the time, number 4 Cornell. They beat, at the time, number 8 Dartmouth on their home ice. So do we see Quinnipiac falling into the trap game against Brown, or do we see them surging against Brown going into that Yale game?
I don't believe so. I think that they have their minds focused on the whole, one game at a time aspect, and that sort of seems to resonate within the whole locker room as the team, and with the amount of media coverage that they've gotten the past couple weeks and being on local television, having Coach Rand Pecknold doing something like 15 interviews last week, and he's just saying how focused they are in playing one game at a time. And I think with it being Yale, Quinnipiac on Saturday night, especially around here on campus, people think that that's the team to focus on. But there's a big game still Friday night against a Brown team. So I think they are focused on that. If they were to lose, I don't think it would be because of a trap game. So. Well,
yeah, I got to agree with Matthias, but I wouldn't totally discount that this is going to be a tough game. This is a Brown team that's played this Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team. Very tough. And what some people don't realize about the Brown game is that on the ice, I think there's a strong argument that could be made for this, that there's a stronger rivalry between Quinnipiac and Brown between the players on the ice. We see those games get real heated real quickly. The students and everyone surrounding Quinnipiac and Yale think that the QU-Yale game is the big rivalry, but on the ice, I could guarantee you these players are not overlooking Brown because of what they've been through between these two teams for the past, 3 seasons at the very least.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen it the last 2 seasons. The first round playoff game has been here, Quinnipiac Brown. So Brown always coming in. They play Quinnipiac tough. Those are not usually blowout games. And somebody usually gets tossed from that game, whether it be Brown's coach last year, one of Brown's players, one of Quinnipiac's players. It's always a chippy game. It's always one of the more physical games we see every year. And Quinnipiac's going to need to come out with a lot of energy to avoid that trap game. If they come out complacent, they could lose that and then go into that Yale game with absolutely no energy and just get destroyed at Yale.
Yeah, you guys pretty much just took the words right out of my mouth. I don't think they're looking at this as a trap game. I know that every player on that team is going into this game Friday knowing that they don't want that Brown team to end this unbeaten streak. after what he just said about the last 2 years going to the playoffs, even the regular season games last year were pretty chippy as well. So it's going to be a tight game. I think it's going to be a lot of hitting, really physical. It's going to be down to the wire. It's going to be closer than a lot of people think, but I know that the Bobcats don't want Brown to end that unbeaten streak at all.
All right, before we move on to men's basketball, we got to talk about Eric Hartzell, nominated for the Hobie Baker Award. What do you guys see in him this year? You know, we know he's been good in the past, but did we think he could play at this level that he's been playing to, elite? I mean, some rumors have the Philadelphia Flyers looking at him as a possible draft prospect. So do we also see him maybe moving on to the top 10, maybe even the top 3 finalists for the Hobie Baker Award?
Just real quick, I'll hit on this. The fact I didn't really see this coming, to be honest with you. Playing behind Dan Clark, and then now last year I was able to break through and get his start. I think we've seen some points of brilliance in the past from him, but able to go into that Philadelphia Flyers camp this summer, I think really has changed his mindset. Whatever they had him going there, clearly it's not working on the NHL level for them, but for Eric Hartzell it's been working. So I do think he can get into that top 10 in the fan vote, so make sure you go to HobieBakerAward.com and vote for Eric Hartzell every day to try and get him up there. I think he's currently in 9th, so trying to get him into that hump. Is he going to finish in the top 3? That I'm pretty sure he might not, just because the fact he has to play stellar in these last 10 games and to, I think, have a chance at that.
Yeah, well, it's tough for goalies to win the Hobie Baker. We know this. The last time that a goalie won the Hobie Baker was Ryan Miller out with Michigan State. So it's difficult. But I think the big thing that Hartzell's been able to do for this team is provide confidence from the back end. It's been Hartzell and it's been the entire defense that's really provided confidence. And we talked a little bit about it earlier in the show that the offense has been lacking a little bit, but that's where Hartzell has picked it up. And is he deserving to be in the top 10? Sure. I think he is. Is he deserving to be in the top 5? Possibly, but you know it's tough to expect him to take it over some of the guys like Johnny Hockey or Goudreau Baker. That Johnny Goudreau is going by some of those nicknames, or even Walter is out for Nebraska Omaha. So it's going to be tough for Hartzell to get some of that national recognition, but people are aware. With Quinnipiac being the number 2 team in the nation, they know one of the reasons why they're here is because of Eric Hartzell. So trust me, people know what's going on in Hampton. People know what's going on with Eric Hartzell.
Yeah, I have to agree. The confidence is the biggest key. You see it really with any goaltender in any level, whether it's women's or men's. If their goaltender isn't playing well, the team doesn't play with confidence. And I think the biggest surprise that he showed me this year is, sure, you knew he was probably going to be the number 1 goaltender coming in with 2 freshman goalies as the 2 and 3 strings on the team, but I didn't expect him to play this many games. I expected to see a little bit more out of Guy Tig at the beginning of the season, but since he's gotten the groove, you haven't seen anything but Hartzell, and that's my biggest surprise at least.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have hit on it. Hartzell's been that cornerstone the entire season, with the exception of that Colgate loss way back when. But, I mean, he's played solid since then. 18-2-3, I think he is this year. So you really can't take away from it, but as Mark said, it's very difficult to win the Hobie as a goaltender. And I mean, you look at Johnny Gaudreau, you look at Corbin Knight in Wisconsin, it's going to be really tough to overcome those guys that are putting up numbers like they do.
And just going off what he just said, that Colgate game, that was the last game of October, and he hasn't lost since that game. That just tells you how dialed in he is.
Well, we don't know if Eric Hartzell is going to make the top 10, the top 3, or win it. We do know one thing. This men's ice hockey team is on fire right now. Big game at Brown, even bigger game at Yale this weekend. We're going to take a quick break here on Bobcat Blitz. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit of men's basketball. 3 wins in their last 4 games. Have they turned the corner? Well, we'll talk it over with these guys. And we're back here on Bobcat Blitz, so switching from the ice to the hardwood floor. The men's basketball team, like I said before the break, has won 3 out of their last 4 games. It looks like they've finally turned the corner. They're 500 in NEC play right now. So that's the big question I'm going to throw out to you 4 guys. Has this team turned the corner, or is this team still going to struggle down the rest of play in the Northeast Conference? We do know the schedule does get harder. You still got to go to LIU. You still got Robert Morris to come here on Valentine's Day. You got a big game against Wagner this weekend. So what do we see for the team the rest of the way?
I guess I'll take it first. Not everyone's really wants to talk about this men's basketball team, but I don't know if I really believe that they've turned a corner quite yet. The thing is, they still haven't clicked. I mean, FDU is a win that they should have had locked up in the bag, and that game was close, only a 2-point victory. The Central win is nice. That was another close game, and it's nice to see them beat a team like Central. They've got a couple of good players, but I'm not convinced that this men's basketball team is still really bought into the program. They're still trying to work some young guys into the rotation and see how they work out. I don't think that Tom Moore really did a good job of a feeling out process during the out-of-conference schedule. I feel like at this point in the season, this team should know what their identity is and what they need to do in terms of rotation and in terms of an offensive game plan. And I still don't think that they've figured that out quite yet. But what we've seen from this Bobcats team in the past, they could turn it on. You said it, they've won 3 out of their last 4. They could all of a sudden reel off 5 or 6 straight, and I wouldn't be too surprised. But to say that they've turned the corner right now, I'm not convinced that they have done that quite just yet.
I don't think they've turned the corner. I think they're inching up to that corner and about to make the turn. We saw it, I think, in the Central game after broadcasting it. I think we had talked about it, about how that might have been their best complete game that they've played, either off on the offensive side. And talking in Coach Moore's press conference afterwards, he said at the beginning of the year they were a team that prided themselves on defense that couldn't score the ball to save their lives, and now they've sort of gone towards the offensive side that's sort of, struggled on defense. So when you come down to conference play, that's not really a spot you want to be in, transitioning your team, like Mark said, of who you really are. But I do think offensively, now that they are back and healthy once Garvey Young fully gets back in the starting lineup, I think that will help boost this team. He's a huge glue guy, a guy like Jeremy Baker was a couple years ago. You guys don't know who he was, but our freshman year, Jeremy Baker, I think, really was there for the Bobcats when needed to help with Feldine, with James Johnson, as well as Justin Reddy. But I think this team is getting there. They have the ability to, but like you said, you still have to go to LIU. You have a lot of road games on your schedule. You still have Robert Morse to come here. But we'll see in these next 4 games coming up, a 2-game road trip this week and then home and away next week. That definitely will be the key for the Bobcats.
Yeah, and I think this team's finally starting to figure out who their scorers could be. They're not set yet, but we know Ike is one. We can guarantee that. Zaid's finally starting to step into it. He's been doing it on and off all season, so if he can keep it consistently now. And Shaq Shannon coming off the bench. I talked to Coach Moore today, and he said, back when he was at UConn with Calhoun, he said, once a guy hits 20, he knows he can hit 20, and it kind of eases up on his offensive pushing. Shaq Shannon hit 18. He hit 6 of 7 from 3 against Central. He had another 4 against FDU from beyond the arc. So he's starting to get that 3-point stroke. He's starting to become a guy that the Bobcats can go to if they need those points. And it looks like if he can continue going, they will be able to turn that corner.
Yeah, I have to agree with what Mark really said too. I don't think they're quite there yet. Sure, 3 out of the last 4, and even what you said about the complete game, you got to still see a few more complete games. 4 out of the next 5 games are against teams that are either tied or below them in the standings. So realistically, those are teams that they probably should beat or compete pretty well against in a complete game effort. So I would have to say, if for the team to completely turn the corner, I think you got to come out on 500 out of these at least next 5 games.
Just want to know how you come out of next 5 games at 500.
Over 500.
Okay. All right, men's basketball team at the Mount down in Maryland on Thursday, and they're at Wagner on Saturday visiting our good old friend Miles McQuiggan. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the women's basketball team. This team is probably quietly having the best year of a Bobcats team other than the men's ice hockey team. With all the hype around the men's ice hockey team, no one's paying attention to this women's basketball team, which is 17-2 right now and undefeated in NEC play. So to those people who really don't know why this women's team is so good, I want you each to give them a reason why this team's so good. Let's see if we can not get any repeats on this one. So Who's going first and gets the
I think I'm going to go
bench?
first, and I think I'm going to have to say their defense. It's been phenomenal all year, and their cornerstone win defensively was FDU. They held them to 39 points in a 40-minute game. So that's less than a point a minute. This team can really do it, and it really helped Coach Trish Fabry bring them to her best start in the NEC at 8-0. So defense has been the huge key for this team.
I'm going to play off that, and I think it's their offense. The fact of how they can now come out, have this run and gun style sort of, get down the court, who, the shooters are, get them the ball. With great facilitators, whether it be Boo Abshire, who starts at the point, or you have Lisa Lieback. Very few teams can say they have a senior-laden point guard coming off the bench that can help distribute the ball, but, Trish Fabry has that with this team. There's 9 players on this team that averages 3.5 points or more a game. And we talked about their line changes and sort of how this transition from hockey. But in the game last night against Central Connecticut State, who's the second team in the NEC, if you're second best, maybe your best shooter, some people say the best pure shooter at the school, Jasmine Martin goes 1 for 12 from the floor, and you still win by double digits, something's going right for this team. And, Felicia Barron had a heck of a game last night. And I know someone will talk about it, and I'll lead them in with this, but their depth is just amazing.
Yeah, and I'll pick up that. I'll go with their depth. I mean, he just pretty much hit it all on the head. But I can even go off Nick a little bit too with the defense. Defense, it's been working with the men's team, and it's the men's ice hockey team. It's working with this women's basketball team, and everyone says that defense wins championships, so you can't complain with that.
And I'll be a capstone for this entire women's basketball discussion. And say that I was going to say the line changes, Matthias, to sort of segue from hockey. Also, Matthias, I was the one that said that Jasmine Martin is the best pure shooter.
I knew someone had said.
And I still hold to that. If you give her some space, she could spot up from anywhere on the court and
I
drain
completely
it.
agree.
But it's been the depth for this team, and it's promising. It's not depth that you have to rely on the depth. It's good depth. It's depth that you have top tier players in the conference on both line changes. And they're able to work off of this in such a way that it gives such difficult matchups for the other team that some of these teams in the Northeast Conference simply can't keep up with this Bobcats team. It's remarkable the streak that they've been able to put on in the Northeast Conference.
And especially over the last couple of games, you talked about defensively, they held FDU to 13 points on Saturday in the second half. And then last night, I know it sort of turned into more of an offensive game, but that shows the other side, that they can come in and they can score with some of the better teams and keep up in a fast-paced game. And they've been doing this the last 6, 8 games with some people, Tony D'Estachio thinks, without their best player in Samantha Guasella, who's the epitome of a mismatch. She averages almost 2 threes a game, and she's the 6'2" center for this team. Between her and that rebounding and coming off the bench with 5 completely different players who can help them bring back in that game last night when they were down, this team is something to watch if you haven't seen them.
All right, real quickly before we wrap it up, we're going to go to a buy or sell segment. I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but buy or sell this women's basketball team running the table and going undefeated in the NEC going into the NEC tournament.
I'll take that. Buy. I think if you look at each game individually for this women's basketball team for the rest of the season, there is not a game that they should lose. You take it by a game-by-game approach, and I can't see a matchup for this women's basketball team that they'd lose. So I'm going to go out on a limb. I know it's hard to say this. I'm going to say buy women's basketball here at Quinnipiac, wins out the rest of the way, sweeps the NEC tournament, gets, 12 or 11 seed in the NCAA tournament.
I think I'm going to have to agree with a buy there. They really haven't played terribly at all. Their 2 losses, I think, are combined 12 points. And that's to a very good Georgia Tech team and a very good Hartford team this year. So they've kept it close with powerhouse teams, and their depth, defense, offense, everything we just touched on, makes them way too difficult of a team for anybody in the NEC to keep up with them.
I'm going to say sell because I don't want to be the guy that said buy on this. I know how much you think I'm a jinx. So I'm not going to be the jinx.
We burnt the robe. It's okay.
I'm going to say it's a sell. You'd like to see them do it as a fan, but, you got to realistically believe that it's a tough thing to do, and especially in such a competitive conference. So I'm going to sell.
I'm going to buy, but the only thing that, from the sell standpoint, of a game at Sacred Heart. That's the only thing I think really on the schedule the rest of the way that could skip them up. A player like Gabby Washington, the Rookie of the Year last year in the NEC, very good player. But, the depth that this team has, they just wear down teams, whether it be offensively or defensively. And I think that eventually will get them. And I think that they will be able to sweep the NEC. And, womensbasketballstate.com, which is a website also does for men's basketball, currently has the Bobcats ranked 19th in the country across the board in efficiency and scoring and everything like that, as well as from a human standpoint. So that just goes to show you how good this team is.
I'm just going to go on record and say that I hope they prove me wrong.
And they already beat Sacred Heart by 30 points this year.
But that was at home.
Yes.
Believe me, I am
With
shocked as much as you are. But
raucous Quinnipiac crowd.
But it shows that they could dominate this conference
oh, they can.
with
And,
ease.
I mean, some people think their next best team and the next best player in the league, Artemis Spanu, is on a team, and Robert Morris that's struggled so far this year.
Well, we all hope you enjoyed the new and improved Bobcat Blitz. Before we go, we want to see who your favorite panelist was. So tweet at Q30 Sports who your favorite panelist was. Was it Matthias? Was it Marty? Was it Mark Schwartz? Or is it Nick Dench? Or did you just like the host so much? I don't know. Just
Nobody likes the host.
So we hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you again next week. We're going to try and bump the start time up a little bit. Stay tuned. Follow us on Twitter at Q30sports.com. Until then, from my 4 panelists and all the guys behind the scenes, I'm Zach Daly. Thanks for tuning in.